we're live now. No, not yet. Let's see here. I always struggle with this because it says we're waiting. Yes, okay. Perfect. Hello, everybody. It's been a little while since I've done one of these. Last time was with the new Gorillaz album back in February, around this time. And I knew I had to do another one of these because Boards of Canada today just released their first album in nearly 13 years, which is pretty incredible. Now, to give you guys, as I like to start these streams, I like to give you guys a history of the artist I'm about to listen to. So, Boards of Canada are an artist that I've known about for a while, and I've always liked them. I think as far back as like the pandemic, like 2020, around there. But I never really took like a deeper dive into their discography. Like I listened to their studio albums and I listened to a couple of the EPs, but that was about it. And then last summer actually, this video by The Wonky Angle, one of my favorite YouTube channels, he made a video where he went through every single Aphex Twin and Boards of Canada album. And this has honestly become one of my favorite videos on this entire website. Really compelling watch and very interesting breakdowns. And I hadn't heard all the material in this video, so I went back, like a lot of the side projects specifically. So I did that with Aphex Twin, and he's grown on me a lot too, even though I've always liked him also. Same thing with Boards of Canada. So I went back and listened to all of their EPs and albums around the fall, last year, like September, October, around there. And some of the side projects too, and I really like all those. And basically the point I'm trying to make is now Boards of Canada are in like my top 5 favorite artists. I don't even really think I need to explain why. Hello. Have I listened to? No, I have not. Yeah, I mean, Wonky Angle, if he did Patreon, if I like did the whole Patreon thing, I would. This is telling me dropped frames. Can you let me know if the stream looks okay to you guys? Because this is a little concerning, but oh well. Anyway, I want to go down their discography real quick before I actually jump into everything. Which, by the way, Boards of Canada fans are having a great year, because not only do we got this new album, but we finally got HD rips of the old tunes tapes, thanks to Sam here. Shout out to him, because that's, the dude literally bought the tapes from Mike Paradinas at a crazy high price, and then shared the rips with everyone. He went and got these professionally ripped, so, and the Random 35 Tracks tape too, so very cool stuff. But yeah, I'm gonna go through their official releases real quick. Starting off with the High Scores EP. This is a great EP. I don't like how they just rehash See You Later from Twoism, which I'll talk about in a bit. But, all of these tracks are great, even though this one hits better in the context of Music Has the Right to Children, but everything here is great. I'm not counting the Peel Session. Okay, In a Beautiful Place Out in the Country. This is probably my favorite EP, although I'm kind of biased since it's the only one to not have any material in common with the main albums. Kid for Today especially is a really cool sounding, kind of mysterious song with those deep synth washes, those synth pads, and then the sign bells. Very cool stuff. I like all 4 tracks, although this one is a little bit... you have not read my last comment. Okay, I'll read it again then. Have you listened to... By Storms? I don't know what that is. And yeah, same thing. I don't recommend albums to him anymore because his audience is too big for that. Even when I did back in the day, he never really looked into them, but I don't really care. I still like his content. Alright, anyway, going back to this, Trans-Canada Highway. This is their weakest EP. It rehashes this from one of their albums. And this I've never really cared for, but these 4 tracks are nice, although not their best work by any means. Still very good, though. So that's it for the EPs and then the albums. Let's see here. Okay, this, a classic for sure. This is their best album in my opinion. Yeah, that's pretty cool, isn't it? Yeah, all of these tracks are fantastic. I mean, even the interludes, go toe-to-toe with the main tracks in terms of, I guess their memorability. Like, the main melody from Triangles and Rhombuses has just popped in my head at the most random times, and I'll, like, find myself humming that. And obviously, Roy G. Biv is an early favorite, too. But yeah, I really like this whole album. It's one of my favorites. And same goes for GeoGuy. You can take what I said to Music as the Right and apply it here, although obviously this one's darker in tone if you haven't heard it. And it's just packed to the brim with details. So many details throughout this album that I think are just absolutely genius. It does require a bit of effort to, like, you know, dig through it. I don't think this is the type of thing that will, like, hit you immediately, although, I don't know, maybe it will for you. I can't speak for everyone, obviously. But yeah, this is a very close second in terms of their albums. Now, Twoism okay, some people count this as an EP, some people count it as an album. Here it's listed as an album. I've always kind of considered it more as an album since it has 9 original tracks and is excuse me, and is over a half hour in length. But it doesn't, regardless of whether you consider it an EP or not. This was actually their first, like, official release back in '95. And then it got reissued on a wider scale in 2002. So I guess that's why the date is printed as that, or the year rather. This one had to grow on me. I only liked certain songs at first, but now I like the whole thing quite a bit. It's much gloomier than any of their other releases. Like, there's a certain vibe I get out of this one that I don't get from their other projects. I did not like Bass Free initially, but this one grew on me. I think it actually sounds rather unique and cool now. Campfire Head Phase. I know some people were like, oh, this is the worst one, but I've always liked this one. I think it's a smart idea that they, instead of doing something dark again like they did with GeoGaddy, they decided to do something more upbeat. And I actually really like all the guitars across this album. But I will say, though, like, tracks 2 through 5, like, this whole 4-track run is absolutely fantastic, easily the best part of the album. But there are other highlights, too. I really like Hey Saturday Sun. And Slow This Bird Down was a more recent grower. I really like it's, like, you know, dark synth washes and that bit crushed beat. Very cool. This track kind of goes on too long. I get the intent behind it, though. But other than that, I think this is a great album also. And then their 2013 album, Tomorrow's Harvest, which is also a pretty substantial gap here. This one had to grow on me. It's my least favorite still, but I still do like it quite a bit. Grew on me more recently. There are some tracks in here that are forgettable to me, but there are a bunch of really solid tracks here. Like, Nothing Is Real is the most memorable one. You Ritual is a very deserted, desolate interlude track that I like. Let's see what else here. Telepath is cool. It's another one of the better interludes. I like the chiming chords of this track. But yeah, I mean, maybe one day I'll make a more in-depth video going through these albums, but so far, I'll just leave it at that. I mean, I've already been rambling for 10 minutes, so let's get into the main event, Inferno. I am very, very, very excited to hear this. Let me change this real quick. I want to do the whole thing instead of just top chat. Okay, so I did listen to the first 2 tracks already since they were released as a single. And I'll give some thoughts on these 2 real quick, although I'm still going to play them for the sake of listening to the whole album, like, you know, the whole thing. Intro. Now, this one is interesting because it sounds very much like an old school Boards of Canada track. I'm talking, like, around Twoism-ish, like old tunes tape-like stuff. And that's kind of accented by the tape hiss sound in the back. I mean, I'll play a little snippet so you can hear it. Like, it just sounds very classic. I don't know if this is a new track that they just made to like sound old, or if it's an actual old track that they just dug up for the album to use as the intro. But either way, it's cool. So I'm gonna play the rest of this track and then Prophecy, and then I'll give some thoughts on the latter. So let's do it. So I don't usually interject when I'm listening to the songs, but I've already heard this one, obviously. These lyrics are really interesting to me, and I think this was sampled from a speech. I'm gonna have to look into that after this stream is done. Where is it? This. That is really interesting. I'm not gonna be analyzing, like, the themes of the album too much, more of, like, the actual sound. So, yeah. And to answer your question, I've heard of them, I haven't listened to them, and I've heard the same thing you have. I don't really care about Drake at all. So, let's go back to the tunes here. So yeah, this is just as good as I remember it being. It does a lot for being a 5 minute long song. I really like the guitars in the intro. That was a nice surprise because we haven't heard guitars on a BOC album since Campfire Head Phase, and that was 21, well, technically 20, but still 20 years ago. I like the progression of those. I think those are sine bells. Yeah, I'm not going to be doing that again. The only reason I did it with this track is because I've already heard it, like I said. And I didn't pause it, I just lowered the volume. But yeah, I mean, my first reaction towards this was like, this album's going to be amazing. Let me count track two. This sounds like. Yeah, I can see that for sure. Definitely. I can see this being used as like intro music. Actually, quick little side note. By the way, I've completely avoided any spoilers on this. The only thing I do know is apparently this was really weird to me. I guess the U.S. government used a snippet of this track in one of their videos that they posted, which is very strange to me. Now we're gonna get into the new stuff. So everything from this point onwards, I'm gonna let the songs play out in their entirety, and I'll save my comments for the end, like I tend to do with these streams. And also, I'm gonna do the same thing with this stream, like I did with the Gorilla stream, because with that one I had copyright issues, and I decided to just download the VOD and trim it down to cut out the parts where the songs play in their entirety. So I'm going to be doing that for this stream also, and I'll try to get that truncated version out sometime this coming weekend. So, yeah. With that out of the way, let's dive into the rest of Inferno with Hydrogen, Helium, Lithium, Leviathan. That's quite a title there. Okay, so coming off of Prophecy, this one felt, let's say, more low-key. I wasn't really sure what direction it was going to go with those dark synth washes and those reversed drums. But when it started, when the beat hit, I started really liking it. Yeah, very, very interesting kind of progression there. Although I will say the part of this track I enjoyed the most was the outro with those the synth brass progressions. That was pretty cool. So yeah, it's a promising start so far. Now we're gonna go into Age of Capricorn. All right, not what I was expecting, but I think it fits well from a pacing standpoint. How it's a beatless, ambient leaning track. Interesting use of vocal samples. I will say, at least my first reaction to this is more among the "oh, that was interesting" more than "oh, wow, I enjoyed that a lot." This one I thought was interesting with the talk of bearing sins and cleansing. And I'm not sure if that initial sample listing off all the letters was like a text to speech thing, but either way, was definitely an interesting track. Not my favorite though, but who knows? Maybe it'll grow on me. So next up is Father and Son. Now, I did hear, well, actually, I thought, and a bunch of other people thought, that this track is the tape 5 that dropped on the Boards of Canada channel before the album was even announced, because the length matches up, but I've also heard that it's not, so I'm about to find out. So we'll see. Yeah, it's not. It's something different. Okay, maybe a bit of, excuse me, a bit of an abrupt ending, but that was really cool. It felt like a fitting continuation of what came before it. I really like the snare on this particular song. It sounds very satisfying. And I like how the vocal samples are more intelligible this time, especially that main one being like, "Oh, will you send?" Oh, like more than any physical being. It sounded almost like a conversation between all these different voices, and I have to wonder like who that is speaking in the most intelligible voice. But also, again, I'm always a sucker for when they do sign bells synths, and they did that on this one, so thumbs up there. But yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed that one. It was very cool sounding. So next we have Somewhere Right Now in the Future. Oxymoron much? I mean, weird title for sure. It reminds me of on GeoGaddy how the first track is called Ready Let's Go instead of Ready question mark Let's Go. You know. But either way, oh yeah, it's short interlude track, so let's see how it is. Wow, that was beautiful. I loved that one. Definitely hits on that degrading media like analog thing, that appeal that Boards of Canada are known for. This very specifically, it felt semi dreamlike, but also like there was some underlying sense of like anxiety. What it conjured up a very specific image in my mind. It reminded me of like you're like floating on like the ocean or a body of water during a sunset, but instead of seeing all like the vivid warm colors, you're experiencing it through a deteriorating black and white film reel. That's what that made me think of. But that almost put me in like a little trance there. I was I was mesmerized by that. That was fantastic. Which I didn't think I'd be saying about a track with this title, but yeah, they're full of surprises sometimes. But yeah, next up we got Naraka. Should be interesting. Well, that was certainly intriguing. I did really enjoy that. I was kind of caught off guard by that one percussive element that sounded like someone snapping their fingers. And I really liked that one brighter synth progression that popped up two times, the first being around like 30 seconds into it and ending about a minute in. And then there was also that one element that sounded like a triangle, someone hitting a triangle, but with an echo effect. And the latter half of the track with that kind of garbled choir sound. I don't know if those are actual lyrics or if it's just made to sound like, I don't know, some other language without being one. I'm not sure, but that sounded very cool. The latter half sounded very like, I don't want to say dystopian, but it sounded like some kind of like, I don't know how to describe it off the top of my head. I'll have to sit with that one a little longer, but I did really enjoy that as well. So this is not disappointing so far because I had this thing hyped up in my head and so far it's delivering. And I can tell I'm just going to enjoy this the more I listen to it. So next up we have Acts of Magic. Okay, so even though that was a very short interlude, I do actually have quite a bit to say about it. I didn't know what to expect from the title, but this sounded very, I guess, urgent, and I would call this dystopian sounding for sure. That garbled synth bass sounds very foreboding, and this whole track sounded very movie soundtrack-ish. For some reason, it reminded me of, like, you know the Metroid games where Samus has to escape the planet that's about to blow up? It made me think of that for whatever reason. And I was surprised by the panning sound of the birds chirping. I don't know, maybe they left their window open again while recording. But yeah, I mean that did feel like a tiny bit out of place, but it was still interesting regardless. So yeah, I mean that's Acts of Magic. So cool. Next is Memory Death, another shorter track here. Well, that was certainly another interesting interlude. Yeah, this felt very Tomorrow's Harvest-ish to me. That buzzing synth throughout, and then that beeping sound reminded me very specifically of, like, someone in critical condition in a hospital, which kind of fits with the title. And then I really like the addition of those breathy vocals that resemble words. I don't think they actually are. Those reminded me of that opening the mouth interlude from GeoGaddy. But yeah, very good. I'm really enjoying this album so far. Next up, we have The Word Becomes Flesh. I guess we're going to find out how it became flesh. That was really cheesy. I don't know why I said that. I now understand the title. The Word Becomes Flesh. The word is embryo. See, they could have just called it embryo, but no, they called it this instead, which I actually like now that I understand it. This striked like a near perfect balance of this is interesting and I really enjoy this. It started off kind of, I guess, anxious sounding with that word like thump, and then the synth stab where it's like do, and then it progressively became more full sounding, and then that robotic voice came in talking about blood vessels and then blood flow in the embryo and stuff like that. And I think it makes sense because obviously embryos start out a certain way and then end a certain way, right? And I think the choice for a female robotic voice is interesting, A, because it brings more variety, and B, It makes sense given the subject matter. I mean, women are the ones who birthed all of us, so they are the creators of life, basically. Which I found that very, very intriguing. So this, I can definitely, it's already one of my favorites from the 10 I've heard so far, and I can see this growing on me even more. So very, very cool. I like that one a lot. So next, let's go to Into the Magic Land. Now, that felt like a very good mix of old Boards of Canada and new Boards of Canada. Those jittery synth textures sounded very nostalgic, I guess. And those already sounded very cool, but the guitars and also the bass, those are what really make this track. I really like how they brought back the guitar again for this piece. And I was also surprised towards the back end of the song, or the back half. It sounded like synthesized xylophones came in for a little bit. That was a nice touch that I was not expecting. So yeah, that was cool. Yeah, that's the meme for like a lot of the stuff that's coming out. Yeah, I mean, I can definitely see that with a lot of these tracks. I wouldn't say all of them, but a good chunk of them, like the one we just listened to, I can definitely see that being played in that context. But I really like the vibe of this album so far. I gotta say, like, this album is what, over an hour long? Almost 70 minutes, and it's going by pretty quickly. Like, these songs are grabbing me quite a bit. I mean, so far, the only one that I heard I wasn't really crazy about was Age of Capricorn, but I mean, everything else is very good. So, I'm intrigued by this title. Next, we have Blood in the Labyrinth. So, at first, I thought this song sounded like a more low-key version of Into the Magic Land. I was like, all right, yeah, this is cool. Then those echoing sitars, I think they are, came in, and I was like, wow, that's new. I haven't heard that, instrument on any of their other tracks before. Cool. That's, something new there. Very nice. It felt pretty moody and atmospheric, as a lot of this album has. But this one in particular hit in a different way, and I think a lot of that has to do with the sitar. If that instrument wasn't there, I don't think I'd like this track as much, but, it definitely caught my attention. So, yeah, cool. Next, we have Deep Time. I'm intrigued by this one, just because of the title. Okay, so this is the Tape 5 track that was dropped on the BOC channel before the album was announced. I wasn't sure if it was going to be here or not after people thought it was going to be Father and Son, but no, it's here. That's why I paused it, because I have already heard this one. I will comment on one thing before I play the rest of the track. No transition between these two. It sounded like there was going to be one, and there just wasn't. I know there is, I don't know if it's out yet, but I know there is either going to be or there is a continuous mix that's a little bit longer. That's exactly 70 minutes. So yeah, that would definitely fix the issue. That's honestly though, like, the lack of a transition is really my only complaint with this thing. And I remember on their last album, Tomorrow's Harvest, the same thing happened between Collapse and Palace Posey. There's a guy who made a review on all of BOC's albums. I can't pronounce his username, but if you're a big fan of BOC, you've probably already seen his videos, and he argued that these tracks, if put in a different order, made the album make more sense, basically, and I agree with that. But that I'm going on a tangent now. Yeah, so I'll let the rest of this. I'll let the rest of this track play out, and I'll give my thoughts, and I'll see if they've changed since I first heard the track. Okay, so that was definitely the slightest bit different from what I remember from the Tape 5 video. Definitely the most ambient track on the album, and I do very much enjoy it. It evokes imagery of exploring the vastness of space, like drifting along the vacuum aimlessly in space, which a select very few other tracks of theirs, I didn't phrase that well, give me that vibe as well. The second half did sound more hopeful, though. Like, maybe that's when you land on the planet and discover life from your space travels. I still very much enjoy that track. I tend to like ambient tracks like this more if they're surrounded by stuff that has more of a beat focus, Wow, we're coming up towards the end already? That felt really quick. Next is All Reasoned. Okay, I almost said All Reasons Depart, but it's All Reason Departs. Alright, interesting title once again. Okay, first of all, great transition out of Deep Time, which I forgot to say, but I really like the harp on this one. Again, cool to hear all these different instruments on a Boards of Canada album. Second of all, a thought that occurred to me when I was listening to this track was, holy crap, the sound design on this album is insane. There's a lot going on in this track, all kinds of different synth textures and plinky echoing textures too. And there was one part towards the beginning that even sounded like a synthesized pizzicato string texture, which I thought was very interesting. It has a good progression to it too, some quieter moments, some more lively moments, cool intro too, just really good stuff all around. Next is Arena Americanida, which sounds like what they would call a building that's right on the border of Canada in North America, but no clue what this is going to sound like. I mean, this album's been, I'd say, full of surprises. A lot of different ideas here, which is very cool. But yeah, let's jump right into it. This felt like what would happen if you took a typical BOC track and fused it with like an upbeat 80s synth pop tune. The bass and the snare specifically felt very 80s throwback ish to me. It was really interesting to me how quiet this track started and ended, but the rest of it was quite lively. That's about all I have to say on that one. I wasn't really sure what to expect given the title, but I once again really enjoyed that. So next we go to The Process. Um, that was another nice track, although not one of my favorites. For the first half of it, I was like, okay, this sounds cool, but it doesn't really bring anything new to the table. The intro caught me off guard a little bit just because it was kind of loud, but yeah, the first half I was just like, yeah, this is cool, but it's, nothing new, nothing really that attention grabbing. And then the piano came in, I'm like, okay, that's nice, I'm glad that's there. The second half was a lot more compelling to me. But yeah, I mean, that's about all I have to say about this one. Coming up to the penultimate track, we have You Retreat into Time and Space. Sounds very foreboding. Alright, so here we have another one that's a two-parter, pretty much. The first half had me thinking that this was just going to be another one of those beatless ambient tracks. But yeah, that was another really good one. The first half, the synths in the first half sounded very glacial to me. They felt very icy, which was pretty cool. But the second half of the track was the star of the show, in my opinion. Or I guess the track, rather. I don't know why I said show. Yeah, like it felt more hopeful and positive than pretty much any of the other tracks here. It reminded me a lot of like these few tracks here, like these brighter ones from Campfire Head Phase specifically. A lot of really pretty and glistening textures there and melodic progressions too. So yeah, that was a pleasant surprise. I really enjoyed that. All right, one more and then we're done. I Saw Through Platonia. So, Boards of Canada albums tend to have, I don't know, I was going to say they tend to have weird endings. Sometimes they do. The standout feature of this track is the heartbeat throughout it, which is, I don't think that's something they've ever done before. And I think it makes sense here for this album. Otherwise, I mean, it's the standard fare for this album with all the synth textures and, sounded kind of anxious. The last few seconds though were definitely a bit unnerving, how all the sound fades out except for the heartbeat and then you get that buzzing synth and how it just abruptly cuts out. It's ordinarily I'd complain about that type of thing, but I think it works here. It's just definitely a bit of a weird ending. I mean, there's five. Am I really missing anything here? Yeah, I didn't think so. But yeah, that was definitely an odd ending. I feel like you could have taken this track out
altogether and had this been the ending, but then it wouldn't have been fitting since it was like, you know, the one brighter spot. I think this was a more fitting ending, although this could have worked as an ending too. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. That was Inferno, and I gotta say, it delivered. I had high expectations, and they were met. I have very few complaints about this album, and I can see this thing growing on me more with time, like I was saying earlier. One thing I was a little worried about is that it might be like a rehash of their other albums, but it's really not. This one does its own thing for sure. There's certain elements that remind me of past projects. So, yeah. I'm going to wrap up the stream here. Since I'm not going to lie, guys, I have to go use the bathroom. But yeah, this was fun. Thank you to anybody who tuned in, regardless of how long you stayed. And like I said earlier, I will be making, or posting rather, or both technically, whatever, a truncated version of this, but my comments will stay intact. And that'll be posted as a regular video like I did with the Gorilla stream. So yeah, if you're watching that version of the video, hi. Yeah, have a good night, guys.